Welcome to another episode of Esports Next Podcast. I am your host, John Davidson. We have a special guest today, Mr. Lavell Juan, CEO of Bragg House, who recently served as a speaker and panelist at Esports Next 2024. Welcome to the show, Lavell.
Thank you. Thank you for having me in your podcast. And also, obviously, being a speaker at the conference was an amazing experience. So thank you. Happy to be here.
Absolutely. Well, we had a few conversations before the conference, and at Esports Next was the first time that we met in person. My personal opinion is there's just, you can connect really well with someone on a phone call and a Zoom call, but there's absolutely nothing like meeting one to one in person.
Correct. Absolutely. Yeah. I think we spent like close to an hour and a half on our half an hour first call.
Yeah, it was one of those ones where it's just you just click with someone, and we had a lot of great I think similar opinions, and we just both have this passion, and the ESTA leadership and community also has this greater passion for serving the industry, bringing people together, helping to effectively really engage brands with the community because that's what makes it work. I
Agreed.
remember years ago realizing I was in a couple rooms a couple different times at agencies and brands. One time somebody said, "We got another 100 grand for this project." And at the time, to me, that was a big budget based on my experience at the time. I was like, another 100? Like I worked on stuff that was like 40, 50, whatever. And then another moment I had at a big brand, I remember our marketing director one day said, "I got to spend $1 million before the end of the year." And it was like October. And that just blew my mind. And what went through my mind at that moment was it takes money to do cool stuff, right?
Absolutely.
Like if you and I want to do something cool, we might have a few grand to spend where won't hurt the savings too much or whatever, right? Like, but if we want to do something really, really cool, that may take tens, hundreds of thousands of dollars to pull off, right? And
Yeah.
an individual doesn't have that money, but brands have that money. And not only do they have that money, but they have it allocated
Yep.
to effectively reach people. And I think for too long, we've seen advertising and marketing as gating what you want to get to.
Yep.
Right? Watch my pre-roll ad before the YouTube video.
Yep.
No, right before the good part of the episode, let me tell you about
In the
Bounty paper
commercial.
towels or whatever, right? You know, but I think what's far more effective, and especially with younger generations who have ad blockers, who are savvy when it comes to commercials and stuff, is don't gate what they want with your brand.
Absolutely.
Enable and empower what they love with your brand by enabling them to do more of it because of you and wrap that with your branding.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree 100% on
I
that.
think we figured this out. We can end the episode. That was real quick.
I mean, I think it's fine. I mean, just roll the credits.
Well, I'm supposed to be the host, which is supposed to set you up for success. So why don't we switch it over a little bit here? We'll get a little deeper into the brand stuff, but let's start out. Lavell, what is Bragg House and what are you all about?
So we are a media tech company that is focused on casual college gaming. And what we've tried to do is we've tried to create this ecosystem of these casual college gamers. And that encompasses everything from tournaments to socially to being able to connect them. And by creating first that community, we've successfully have become a conduit for brands to authentically, and I think you're hearing that word a lot now. I think you heard it a lot before, but no one knew what it actually meant. For brands to authentically connect to Gen Z and an example was exactly how you set this up, you know, not having these commercials or these things, but literally kind of meeting them where they are and then, naturally having that connection. So what we've tried to do is been that media tech company that has that full ecosystem. From, in our platform, we have tournaments, we have a social platform where people can communicate. Obviously, a lot is colleges. So we work a lot with colleges. And then, the revenue models go anywhere from, which, I'll dive in more if you need me to, from sponsorships to data to all these different things. So brands can again effectively allow us to do what we need to do, but then they'll be able to connect to the Gen Z, our community.
You said a lot with that brief statement, which I would really want to unpack. So, casual college gaming is the first thing I want to start with. One thing I think a lot of brands experienced in the 2017, 2018 gold rush of esports that we saw, right?
Yep.
I saw a lot of these decks because people were pitching me when I was at GameStop. Fortunately, I had somebody who did valuation for sponsorships. So I'd be like, hey, Roger, what's this really worth? you know, but we all saw global numbers for gamers.
Yep.
And we said, hey, you want to reach the gaming audience? It's all of these people. But number one, for a brand that is local or just national rather than global,
hmm
those numbers were very different.
Yeah.
And then part of what we saw with part of the unfortunate downfall of someone like an Overwatch League,
hmm
if you're the Dallas Fuel, I'm out here in Dallas, and they just got rid of their team
Yeah.
recently. But if you're the Dallas Fuel and you're pitching me the global numbers of gaming, and then you filter that down to North America, and then you filter that down further to just the video game Overwatch, and then you filter that down to the designated marketing area of North Texas, great, I'm reaching a few hundred people,
Exactly right.
probably,
Yeah.
right? And so, one thing a lot of people who aren't deep into gaming and esports understand is that esports, while it's a shiny and easily sponsorable industry, I should say, it's a microcosm of the broader gaming industry.
Excellent. I mean, that point that's exactly, I respect people who understand the terminology esports and gaming. So in that, example when you said, people don't even realize exactly what you said, that esports is less than the numbers you even said for gaming. And with
Right.
such a smaller audience, what we tried to do, again, going back to your question, what we tried to do is we said that is like 1% of the world. As exciting and shiny and all it is
Yep.
1%. So the other 99%, which represents billions, how do we connect to them? And that's really what was the purpose of Braghouse, is to say, how can we get that? How can we create something that, these people enjoy gaming, they enjoy things, but they all have different personas.
Right.
So the first 2 years was really building that out to find out, how do we reach them? How do we talk to them? What kind of community leaders, ambassadors, what kind of research we do to create that. And I think we did a really nice job of getting that done first, using all the assets of, tournaments and, all the popular games and things like that, because again, that's what it is, but just making it available to the masses.
Yeah, and to give some context on that esports to gaming with numbers for the audience, esports is about a $1.5 billion industry.
Yep.
And people say, oh my gosh, it's $1 billion industry. This is huge. Let's go after it, etc. Right? For context sake, the broader video game industry is right around 220 billion.
Correct.
So for brands, when you hear those numbers, you're like, it makes no sense to go after the 1.5 versus the 220, right?
Correct.
The challenge a lot of brands have, in my experience, is organically, authentically integrating into non-competitive video game experiences.
Yep.
I always use the example of when I was at GameStop, I remember Red Dead Redemption 2 came out.
Good game.
And Call of Duty is the biggest seller at GameStop every year. And so
Yeah,
you
of
you
course.
you compare like what's close, right?
Yeah.
Red Dead 2 almost outsold Call of Duty that year at GameStop. Huge, right?
hmm
But if you look at the brand integrations between the two games, Call of Duty has an esports ecosystem.
hmm
It's also, depending on the game that year, but modern, right? And there's active tournaments and all these things. So you've got an esports title,
Yep.
right? On the non-competitive one that sold just about as many copies, you have zero competitions, you've got zero tournaments, and it's set in like an 1800s old Western
Yeah.
scene. So unless you're the Ariat Boot Company, I don't know how you're integrating into that game in ways that the community responds to, right? And
Yeah,
so I've always said, like, marketers and agencies, they recognize the familiar sponsorable assets of esports,
yeah.
tournaments, jerseys, content, etc., right? It's like
Hmm.
I could slap my logo on so many things.
Yep.
And then they later find out it's more complex than that. And it's people like you who help them realize that. What I love about what you're doing when you talk about casual and collegiate, I always say that not every student on campus is an esports enthusiast,
Yep.
meaning the poorest of the core who compete, but just about every single student is a gamer.
Yep. Absolutely.
And so if you
Absolutely.
engage broader gaming through community and you say, guys, we have this thread that is common among all of us that we love to get together and do same types of things. We have the same life experiences. We speak that same language, and you might be playing this game and I might be grinding this game, whatever, but we are of the same subculture.
And what you said is exactly why I think we started with Gen Z in our community because we tried to do a couple things. The reason why we did collegiate is, a little bit was because of my background. I played college sports, and one thing I remember about being in college
Where did you
is
play college sports at?
hook 'em
How come
horns, best university in the world.
UT? Okay. Okay.
Um, And what I remember most about that is really just the community you were part of. I was fortunate. I was a kid from Brooklyn who, never went anywhere else. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh my God, where I'm in Texas, but you have that community and you
Uh-huh.
just feel like you're part of the team. And whether you're an athlete, whether you're on the chess committee, no matter where you are, you have that community that you have in college. And I just remember that. So I said, you know what, where I want to start is leveraging that community. And then exactly the other point you said, which made so much sense, I was like, okay, in that community, yeah, you may have people always focused on, the athletes and they game and stuff they do, and that's why NIL and stuff's so big and we do great things with that. But there are thousands of other kids who are also gamers. And then, you mentioned esports enthusiasts, 100% right. But there's also the people who just like to watch. There's the people who are actually really, really competitive and they would like to get discovered. And there's like, I forgot what the rankings are now. I think it's somewhere like 5 or 6, but there's so many different personas of what someone in gaming is.
Mm.
And what we tried to do is we said, let's focus on creating something for every single one of those things through our platform. And once we can all get them engaged, that they're like, we love it here. This is great. Now you can go and say, okay, great. What are the offerings we can give them? Or what are the things? How can the brands connect them? And then the last point, which I think is just spot on, objectively, people only see tournaments, this game. No, there's so much more to the community that keeps them there. It's not just college football. It's not just
Yeah.
college baseball. There's so many things that, if you find someone from Texas, like, yeah, I don't watch any of that sports, but I still love my community. So the trick is getting something for the entire community. And that's what we try to create in Bragg House is like, let's get the entire community because there are so many different personas there.
Yeah, I love that. And go a level deeper too in the name broadcast as well, because you are doing something kind of unique that helps to uh not confuse or create complexity around financial bets or stuff, but you really level or you utilize that level of competition and
Yeah.
brags. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I again in building out a business model, my background is from corporate America, so I'm a securities lawyer by trade. Don't hold that against me. So I was just like, I analyzed like every other business, and I said, all right, well, what are the offerings that this community really wants? And betting is something that's pretty huge, even though they're not legal in Gen Z. So I said, well, I don't want to do that. And also, being a lawyer, I don't want to run afoul of anything. How can I create or gamify a betting experience that is going to just be fun, but it's not going to have the implications? So I worked really hard on that and I created something called bragging. And we're really pretty proud of it. And what it is, you just get to make these, it's a parimutuel algorithm set up where you make these, predictions, these bets, brags on outcomes and different things as you're going live in the game, what's happening with your friends. And what you get awarded to is really more brag bucks. So you can just kind of really make more of these brags. But the more engagement that you get for it, though, then we give loyalty points and stuff where you can exchange it for actually real prizes. So breaking all that down, you get to make free bets and get real prizes. And it's totally legal. That's how you break that down.
That's awesome. And I'm guessing that's probably a brand integration opportunity as well, right? It's like, what
Of
kind of
course.
price am
Of
I
course.
winning?
We
I'm
had a
winning
Yeah,
X.
we especially with the loyalty part of it though, because then they can get to offer real prizes. So we work a lot with McDonald's and Coca-Cola. We're fortunate to be like the gaming activation for FIFA. And for FIFA, we had a FIFA token, and that token was actually like, branding opportunity, but they were actually able to exchange that into the store for prizes that were there. So it's an amazing branding opportunity, but you can also the call to action to them was the exposure. So we're able to use that for them to actually really exchange that and get something of value. And again, I always look at my community, it's a for-profit business, but I always look at my community. So to be able to actually give my community something for their participation,
Yeah,
that's very rewarding.
that is. I want to take you back to the Esports Next conference and some of the because we brought you out in order to share on the state of esports panel. You were joined by who were your fellow panelists on that? I think it was Ben Smith from ESPN was the moderator.
Yep.
Marco Maru of M80.
Yep. Yep. I think I didn't recognize the. Oh, let me see. I don't know. It was a great panel. I don't remember.
I kind of have like post conference haze, whereas it's like, who was on which panel, sort of a thing.
Yeah, it'll come back to me, but I will come back to before you're towards this. Um,
I'm gonna pull this up right now, and it was Kurt Melcher, who Kurt is a trailblazer in the collegiate esports scene with Robert Morris University, which had the very first
Robert. Yeah.
scholarships, I believe,
Yep.
for
Yep. 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 Yep.
uh,
Yep.
for esports. Yeah, so take us through some of the whether it was some of the things that you were sharing, or maybe some of the things that you learned from your fellow panelists.
Um, so I guess what I really liked about the panel is that everyone I felt like was on the same wavelength because I think the best thing I'll share something someone else said and then something that I'll share that I thought was relevant. But again, it was really refreshing to hear this from these industry leaders, the same thoughts. So what they shared, which I thought was amazing and I've spot on, is that, exactly how you said when you had this 2018, everyone's rushing. With any great thing that happens, you have the trend, everyone rushes to it. Oh my God, this is amazing. This is good. This is great. Awesome. And then, like every other major thing, they start falling off. But the real people that are there carry that to where it is. And I think that kind of fit with something, what kind of my theme is that the potential in the esports industry, in my opinion, is so big and only just getting started. And I
Hmm.
say that because, we had the fad, we had all the stuff. And I think, as we mentioned before, people took the easy revenue models and sponsorship. And that was great, until it wasn't great anymore because it was the same pool, it was the same thing trying to be replicated. But, these other people were not only just industry leaders, but they've built so many successful businesses and they looked at it through other traditional business lenses. And I try to do the same thing. So the point that I brought up is I was like, well, let's look at esports now. It has an annual growth rate of somewhere like 27 to 28% as compared to traditional sports, which is like 10%. It has a smaller barrier entry, and the people that are coming there are so tech savvy. If I'm valuing any of those businesses,
Hmm.
that's huge, but you need to find different revenue models, different things to really work on for it though. And you have to be a little bit more creative, but you have everything lined up ready to go. And that to me was just, it's how I feel, but to be validated or just to have other people who I respect so well convey that through their experiences and they've built probably some of the most successful, companies in the gaming industry was amazing to hear. So that's kind of like, I think, my general take. I was very impressed with just kind of what that that the mindset, it wasn't, again, I love, esports and I'm can talk all day about the different game stuff coming out. But, it's like to get the true value and stuff of the community and of the business model and
Yeah.
stuff, there are business considerations and thoughts that need to be considered. And these people were successful in doing both. So it was a real conversation with real people. Honored to be on that panel to share what we're doing on the data side and to see what they're doing, on the tournament side and on the and other revenue models.
Yeah, it was a tremendous panel. This people with so much experience, like
Yep.
you said, both in and beyond the esports industry. It's a little bit funny when you think about it. It's like, why won't the new thing work the exact way, same way as the old stuff did?
Yep.
It's like, well, because it's new and there's differences.
Exactly.
One of the things you make a great point is there is so much potential. The way we know there's so much potential is the most difficult thing, whether it's a new product, a new industry, whatever, right? Is like, can you get consumers?
Yep.
Can you get consumers who are interested in your thing? Can you acquire the customer?
Yep.
And every single person who has kids can say without a shadow of doubt, the consumer is acquired.
Yep.
Like my 9-year-old son is a massive gamer. Every single kid is a gamer. If you talk to these CMOs, the guys and the ladies who get it,
Yeah.
the people who have kids who are teenagers, a little younger, a little older. I mean, anywhere from probably 5 up to you name it, right?
Yep. Yep.
And so the consumer is there.
Yep.
There are just some differences in the market from the control of the publisher, the
Hmm.
IP, which is a huge thing. We always say nobody owns the IP of football, for
Hmm.
example, or any traditional sport, right? If you and I want to start a football league, we can. We just can't call it the NFL. We can't use their
Yep.
marks or logos.
Yep.
We can have the same ball, we can have the same rules, the same field, etc. If we want to start a Valorant league, we cannot
Yeah.
unless we are within the guidelines,
Yeah.
right? I personally believe, and I'm curious of your take on this.
Hmm.
So I personally believe that in the next 2, 3 years, I think a publisher will open up their IP for anybody to use it. And the reason why I think that is the challenge in the past is the publisher has never felt the pinch, has never felt the pressure. It's the teams that feel the pinch,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And I'm not throwing shade on any publishers. I'm just
Yeah.
explaining a reality.
Yeah.
And so publishers are making billions of dollars,
Yeah.
and there's this core industry called esports that are extremely passionate people who are so passionate that they are willing to develop businesses that and teams that lose money to play your game.
Yeah.
They're paying you to play your game.
Yeah.
And so if I'm a publisher and I'm just looking at spreadsheets and I have no heart for the community, I'm not saying that's the case, but if
Yep.
I was that person, I would say, yeah, keep doing that. And why would I open my stuff up? I'm making billions and this is great content marketing.
Yeah.
Well, one thing that happened this year is there were major layoffs with publishers.
Hmm.
Now, there's been layoffs in the past, but this year, in just the first quarter, there were more layoffs than the entire year of last year.
Hmm.
And a huge part of that was because during COVID, when everybody could play video games and couldn't play anything else,
Yeah.
there was an overinvestment in casual gaming in addition to esports.
Yeah.
And so now it's like, wait, everybody can go outside. Other things gaming is continuing to grow, but people can also do these
Hmm.
things. We're in a vacuum anymore.
Yeah.
My opinion is that I think a publisher will be willing to say, okay, we think it's all about player base, right? Every
Yep.
game is a lot of these games are free now anyway.
Yeah.
So I don't need to worry about I can't make a initial sale. But if I grow my player base, I'm probably making more in-game purchase revenue.
Yep.
I'm probably providing more opportunities for all these licensing with physical products,
Hmm.
etc. And so I think somebody like a Rocket League or somebody who has, broad appeal will say, you can do whatever you want with my game, and they will become the preferred esport.
Yep.
Because I can tell you some of the brands I've worked so hard with some of these brands to make zero money
Yeah.
because of
Yeah.
the limitations of the brand guidelines, right?
I I I agree with you. And I think you will see that. I have two comments to that. One, I think one reason, and you mentioned Rocket League, which was the first thing I thought of. Like Rocket League, huge, but it has a particular following. And it's like, so, because there's that division in the community, again, it has a huge following, but a particular following. It's
Right.
not something that we've done Rocket League events, but not something that will kind of that'll be the go-to as compared to a Call of Duty or something, because
Sure.
we a lot of our events we want to make sure we're inclusive of everyone. And again, there's a certain huge community, but a certain community that's just focused on that. So I
Yep.
think one of the reasons why we're going to do it, that I think people are going to open it up, is to just get more people, just to get more dollars, to get more other revenue streams. I think that's an excellent revenue stream. Again, I don't think anyone looks into you know, the in-app purchases. It just, it was something, again, looking at traditional thing, it was a huge revenue source and just anything before, and then kind of dropped away because,
Yeah.
people were just saying. So I think you're going to see that. What I also think though, and I think we're working hard to kind of do that as well, is I think you're going to see, and it is already, a lot of indie developers, a lot of indie kind of things there, because I just, it's like it, we're getting into a world now where, again, looking at the personas, there are people who just want to develop games and build games. And
Right.
if you have access, if you have a platform that's going to allow, you know, that kind of, you know, distribution of those games, you've now kind of in a way created the other part of the ecosystem that's always again been separate. And I
Right.
think that's, something at least that we're trying to do, and not exactly that, but we're just trying to give as much parts of the ecosystem so everyone has it there. Because again, look at the audience you're saying. No one wants to leave, no one wants to do this. Everybody wants things at their convenience. So I think you're going to see that because I think there's going to be a need for it. So I agree with you. But I think other things are going to present itself as well. That's going to make it more economically smart for publishers to start doing that.
Yeah, and I think, well, one more thing on that note is if you are a brand, the easiest game to work with that has a sizable audience for me to
Yep.
reach, I'm
Yep.
going to use that game.
Absolutely.
I'm not
Absolutely.
choosing games based on my favorite one to play.
Yep.
I'm using them based on what's the least expensive, what's the best audience. We're still in this learning phase.
Yep.
So lowering the barrier to do that. The other thing I think is going to happen is when that first publisher does it and they see the benefits, the dominoes just start to fall.
Oh yeah. Oh
And
yeah.
so, of course, there's still going to be some guidelines. It's like owning the IP of a game is different than owning than a football.
Yeah.
So there's going to be some. But if you said, hey, within these very broad things, yes, you can sell a ticket to an event. Yes, you can sell your stuff,
Yep.
your products at these events.
Yep.
Ways that people who come into the space who want to reach this audience can make money themselves as well. Let
Yep.
everybody win. Another
Even in
point,
some of these
go ahead.
things, just to add, sorry, just even add to that, even some of these, you mentioned the rules and stuff. Again, we work with all these publishers and game developers, and there's, so many different rules, which, it's like you can't have more than two brands on one particular IP. You can't like, and again, you work within these things, but everyone knows who's put on a tournament. the amount of time and the red tape to get over all these things. So you're dealing with the brand, then you're dealing with the publisher, and you're trying to make something in the amount of time to make it worth the money that you spent on it and stuff. If you lower that barrier, everyone, everyone wins. And the only reason why the
For
barrier is
sure.
there is because it can be. It's like no one's really, no one's really challenged that. And that's why I'm saying it's like you give another alternative, people are going to break down that barrier.
100%. And I will tell you, if I was a CMO of a major brand who didn't love this community and have the passion that I do for it,
Yeah.
if I was just there to hit my quarterly earning reports and I
Yeah.
didn't know a lot about esports, I would look at this spreadsheet and I would say, why are we messing with this? Why are we working so hard to make this little when
Yep.
I could just do music and traditional sports or traditional entertainment? We've been doing that for decades and it's worked for us.
I exactly right. And I always say this, and again, this came again a great experience at the conference at ESTA and what everyone also said too, which again, something that I've always looked at. You have all these other revenue models that were successful. NFL, again, they're still successful, don't get me wrong, but NFL,
Yeah.
streaming services, and yet it's like when esports came and became popular, and I think COVID just accelerated that. It didn't introduce it, but it accelerated so that everyone
Sure.
saw it. So when that happened, people said, great, competitors, and they said all these numbers. But I did something different, and I think a lot of the people who are really intelligent and leaders in the industry did too. They looked at what was successful in these traditional models, and they said that is, I would say 90% of those metrics and infrastructure is absent from esports, which again goes back to my
Yes.
first comment. Why I think there's so much potential because you don't have any of these things. You don't have the minor leagues. You don't have the kind of ways to access. You don't have any metric that's worked what they've done for
Yeah.
streaming service, all that stuff. It may be losing value, but it was successful for such a long time because
Yeah.
these metrics work. But the reason why it's losing is because you have a smart audience, you have a younger audience, you have a more, they don't, they value different things. But if you put those values in the metrics that work, it's a game changer.
Well, and this it's perfectly stated the way you said that. And this is why the Esports Trade Association exists. And
Mhm.
this is why the networking at Esports Next is so great. You got two groups of people who need each other but struggle to communicate,
It's so true.
right? We've got traditional business sports people who say, we've been making billions for decades over here. Hey, young gamer, you don't know what you're doing, blah, 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 right? But for some reason, I struggle to reach youth. You're not doing the same thing that we've been doing for decades, right?
Yep, yep,
For the first time in decades, marketers are no longer marketing to themselves.
yeah,
They're marketing to a group of people who have different habits and different consumption, right?
yep,
On the other side, you've got the core esports industry who's saying, hey, boomer, you got no idea what you're doing over here. We know the cool stuff, right?
yeah,
Now, both are partially correct.
absolutely,
So the
absolutely.
gamers are correct in saying, yes, we know modern culture, young consumer behavior. We're doing the hot new thing, etc. But there's no substitute for experience.
Absolutely.
And so if you do not
Absolutely.
have decades of experience in business, you don't know what you don't know.
Exactly right.
On this side, this group has tons of experience, but they are just not informed on the newest thing. And so
Absolutely
ESTA
right.
is the bridge that allows these two groups of people to communicate.
Yep.
And
Absolutely right.
and so both like so a lot of best practices should be applied.
Yes. I
But
agree with that
also
statement 100%.
but also innovation is required as well.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So both are right and both need each other. And that's a lot of what ESTA is doing. That's what a lot of Braghouse is doing as well.
Yeah. I agree. And again, the networking, the opportunities were amazing. I'd be honest to say that I don't think I've actually ever been to a conference where I sat down and listened to most of the panels that were there, which I did
Cool.
because they were all added value to things I were
Awesome.
doing and really just to my understanding of the industry as a whole.
That's fantastic. I wanted to make one more point about the esports audience, which I think you can speak to, and it really enables partnership and brand integration opportunities as well,
Hmm.
which is you're dealing with a digitally native audience.
Yep,
And you
absolutely.
touched on this, right? And so marketers will know that sometimes you implement something as simple as scanning a QR code. I guess everybody kind of knows how to use one after COVID now because we all went to restaurants on patios and couldn't have real menus, and restaurants could increase their prices all the time without printing new menus, which was nice. Um, but a lot of brand integration, especially in a live event, is digital.
Yeah,
And so a huge barrier to being effective is, does the person in that seat know to and how to scan the thing, follow the prompts, or whatever the thing is, right?
yep,
With this young audience, I always refer to my son because this kid has not lived in a world that did not include iPhones.
yeah,
The
yeah.
iPhone came out before he was born. I remember seeing him at, we always keep a balance on screen time, but still seeing him at like 3 or 4 using my phone, like
Yeah,
zooming into pictures.
yeah.
I remember the first iPhone ad, like when they first revealed it.
Oh yeah,
I
I
remember
remember.
doing this, and my mind, bro, was blown. Here's my 3-year-old, can't even read or anything, and he's like, whoop.
Yep,
And
yep,
so it's just the world that they live in. Speak
yeah.
a little bit to the opportunities for brands. Like, why is it more valuable to market to a digital native and a young one who's going to have lifetime loyalty than other types of consumers?
I think you said it. I think it's the lifetime. So what people don't understand about Gen Z is that two things I think are really important. One, they're really loyal, and two, they spend for value. They're a $300 billion industry, and you're like, well, they're kids. No, no. Yes, they spend for things that are of value. So I think it makes sense because, again, looking at all of the other statistics that we said at the beginning, that's an amazing opportunity to get a lifetime value customer that's going to be with you for a very, very long time. And then I think when you figure that out, then you can do many different ways to connect to them. One of the things that I think we focus on doing is, you know, what I call, well, it's not my term, but it's, predictive data. So what I mean by that is that we try to look at both sides of the coins and we say, okay, this is what our audience is doing. This is what we expect them to do. What do they want? And then we say, okay, this is what they want, give them what they want.
I
And
love that. Yeah.
and my audience is happy because they're like, wow, think of Instagram's the best analogy. I don't have to get through all these terrible advertisements. You're giving me the things I want. And then the brands are like, hey, this is actually it saves us millions of dollars in marketing campaigns, shows exactly what we need to do. This is a value to it. We'll pay for that. So it honestly, it just connects two things very neatly together. Exactly what you said. Those two audiences very connected. So I think, myself and obviously other companies I think are trying to hopefully experience are trying to attack that now to really say, hey, this is going to be with us for a long time. Let's get them and let's actually give them what they want.
Yes. I love that because I was, last thing I'll say here is I was working for this big brand. And I remember I had this massive like annual meeting. We got marketing and merchandising and everybody, all the silos, were together in the same
Yeah.
room. We went through aligning the calendar, the promotions and the planning and everything. And I remember our CMO at the time said at the very end of this meeting, she said, and that's what we want to do this year. And I had just been hired, so I wasn't confident enough to raise my hand. But what went through my mind was, is that what our consumers want us to do this year?
Yep.
And I would venture to guess it was not.
Yeah.
I will not share any names. But
The funny thing is that mentality has not changed.
Right.
It has not changed. It is still, and that's why it was good for the networking opportunity when I was in Chicago because I brands were still sitting down saying, how do we get there?
Yeah,
But there were so many other people who were, more like myself and yourself who were like, this is the way. And I go back again to that one comment that was shared by one of the panelists I was on. We've gotten away from the people who just jumped on there, and now we have people who are like, great, let's use this vehicle to really, really, really drive it home because this probably will be the biggest industry.
absolutely. And I always say if a brand, if the experience of the community is not better because of your brand's participation in it, you're not ready yet. And I think we can say Bragg House is a great solution for brands to be able to add value to this huge audience across the country and across the globe. Last question for you. How
Thank
can
you.
people get a hold of you in ways you'd like them to? And if you have anything coming up, please feel free to share that as well.
I think the best thing is our website. We try to keep it updated. So it's just www.braghouse.com. Best way, it has things you can leave messages. You can check out different events that are coming up. Couple of awesome things that I'm, happy to share is we're doing an event in Fort Worth, Texas, and the event's going to be at the Fort Worth Convention Center. We partnered with the Fort Worth Commission Center, Sports Commission, and I'm really excited about this because in going to what the full ecosystem of is, it's going to be tournaments, recruiting. We invited a bunch of colleges in
Wow.
the Texas area, and they get to actually showcase what they're doing in gaming as it leads to careers. So coding and designing and stuff like that. Super,
Wow.
super, super excited about that. And I think it's going to be an awesome event. And to me, it offers more than just, competitive video gaming, which we're also going to have too. And we're
Do you have a
doing
date
an
on it yet, or is it on the
I
website?
do, September 21st. It's on the website as well. I have full disclosure to talk about this now, and we have a date, but you won't see it on the website yet. We're doing an activation in University of Florida with Learfield. It's going to be, with one of my favorite games, why I started Bragg House. So it's going to be NCAA college football, Hook'em Horns again, best team in the world.
Yes.
And then we're going to have other activations that are going to be there. It's going to be open to like the student body, but we're going to be working a lot with NIL, a lot of the athletes are there. So pretty much all the athletes will be, kind of unified and, competing and stuff. And then we're going to be doing something with just the University of Florida football team, more like a hard knocks type event, which is really excited. But again, the commonality with all these different things is we want to show the full ecosystem of how you get this entire community to participate in, you know, interacting with each other, doing all the different things that, you do in the community, but just through gaming. So really excited about those opportunities.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us at Esports Next,
Thank you.
speaking on this panel and joining us today on the Esports Next podcast to share how you are reaching the casual collegiate gamer and helping brands integrate and add value to this space. Thank you for joining us on the Esports Next podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, John. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.